Cool. So we're recording now, and we're gonna start.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry.
I will be moderating.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. So this is a panel about Children of Gaia, which I could try to describe, or I could ask the co-creators to describe for our audience. What is Children of Gaia? Why are they here?
Okay. Well, first let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jayel Draco. I am.
You are not Chris Covelli.
Sometimes
Of
I am
course.
Chris Covelli. I am Jayel Draco, in fact. I am the co-creator of Children of Gaia. Chris and I started this project back in the early 90s. We started working on it, and it has been our focus ever since. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris Covelli. I'm the other co-creator of Children of Gaia. And Children of Gaia is a massive fantasy sci-fi world that touches upon many genres of pop culture. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, romance. And it's something we've been developing world building for a few decades now, and we have lots of backstory and history of this world to create stories from.
I forgot to introduce myself as well. I'm Lynsey G. I am a later addition to the team of people that is helping create COG. So I do a lot of editing and also some of the writing and idea making with this group as well. As does Laurie, who is filming for us right now. All right, so just so that we are all on the same page when we get started, what physical forms has COG taken so far? You've been working on it for a long time, and I see that there's some stuff here.
Okay, well, aside from our 7 million pages in sketchbooks piled all over both of our places, this is our first actual book that we published. This is Great Nations of Rendaraian, and Great Nations is actually, it's a little meta in that it is, I wrote and illustrated this particular book from the perspective of a character living in this world, as if he's writing and illustrating this book. So it's told from that character's point of view. Not all of the things that he says are necessarily accurate, but they're as accurate as this character could make them. And we have other books that we're working on that are similarly told from the perspective of other characters in this universe, in this conflict, this greater world. That's our first book, and then we have two. So this is the world that we're talking about. This is a map. We have all of these places are mentioned within this book. And the author of this book is actually, his purpose in writing and illustrating this, and you can see there's all kinds of detailed illustrations that show what these different people lived like, their way of life, types of structures, all that kind of stuff. He is trying to record information about these great nations that have been attacked and destroyed. He is a scholar from one of these great nations, and he's living in a refugee camp, and he's not sure that there are any scholars left. The libraries were sacked and burned. He's just desperate to get all of this info down throughout the rest of his lifetime, however much time he has left, however long that is. He wants to preserve and record the memory of these places that he grew up in, and all the people that he lost.
So Great Nations is the first big release. What else is there?
We're working on a new book called War Horses that takes place in this land called Terra, which isn't on this map, but it's an entirely different place. The Terrans are the people that are invading Rendaraia, and destroying all these nations. And War Horses is a story that takes place in their homeland. It's this. They said we cross a lot of genres instead of high fantasy. This is actually kind of a spaghetti western story about it's about a journalist chasing down a story of this rustler who came into this remote town and wreaked a lot of havoc, as it were, stealing horses, killing people, and all that stuff. And it's another story that is written by a character that's in our world. This journalist, Landon Ford, is trying to break out, make a name for himself as an author, and he's writing these stories, chasing down this elusive character he calls the Trigger Man.
Do you have the postcard there? We can show you
Yeah.
the cover of the book. We're actually going to be doing a Kickstarter to raise
don't know
money for it
if,
coming up soon.
those
So we're
pass this
telling
around,
everybody.
actually. Here, thank you.
So War Horses is the
Pass
next
this around,
book.
too.
It's pretty much finished. We're just raising money soon to print and distribute it. And there's also 2 short comics that have been produced at this point. One set in Rendaria and one set in Terra, which have been released in Oneshi Press's comics anthology. So what's happening is there's a whole lot of story to tell, and we are taking the opportunity to develop stories across these different realms in which the story takes place, from a bunch of different characters' perspectives, and slowly sort of patching together the larger world by building these disparate blocks until they form the actual story.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think we're sort of to compare it to like Dungeons and Dragons. If we're the dungeon masters, we're sort of peppering out kind of quest hooks, things to get people interested, and eventually it's all going to come together into a massive plot, epic story. But right now it's just we're just putting out seeds of small snippets of the story to get people interested.
And meanwhile, developing the larger story. So, what we did is we actually sourced questions from people who are interested in Children of Gaia, because there is so much story, but we've only released a small amount so far. People have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna...
Should we open up Q&A to the room first?
Sure,
Or do you
if
want to
anyone
go
has
through our
questions.
pre-sourced questions?
Let's go through these first. Plus, with my phone in my hand, I can keep track of the time better. Okay, so the first question, which was asked by Shunned Owl online, is what sets this universe apart from things that we've seen before?
I think that a lot of times in fantasy world building in universes, what we are more familiar with is a world being created from a creator with a bent on a particular genre. So you have this like sci-fi world, or this high fantasy world, or this post-apocalyptic world, right? And I think what's really unique about Children of Gaia is that this is a world, and there are all of those elements in it. There is like sci-fi elements, there is fantasy elements, there's even the post-apocalyptic elements. There's like, it really crosses a lot of genres very seamlessly, because it doesn't pretend that they're different. It just, this scene is a horror scene, this scene is a romance scene, this scene is, a science fiction scene. Like, they all exist in the same story, in the same world. I think that is somewhat unique to the story.
I'd say, going along that vein, it's sort of unique in that we've written so much backstory that covers like thousands of years, and we've actually kind of tracked civilizations like rise and fall. So there's almost like no limit to the technology that can be found in the world. It might be secret, it might be lost, but it's there to be found. There's our normal senses of like, well, this this is a fantasy story, so it takes place in a medieval setting. They don't really have these high technologies. Or this is a sci-fi story. It's, you know, people are in space and doing all these cool, you know, high tech things. It's like we kind of built a world that can accommodate anything.
An ancient robot in a stone castle.
Right.
It could happen.
But it does have its own rules as well. So anything taken with a grain of salt.
Right.
Sure,
right.
yeah.
I mean, it
I
doesn't
rules.
break its own rules. That's the thing. That's the most important thing.
All right. Next question is sent in by JC Chase online. Says, if someone is new to Children of Gaia, can they jump in at any part of it, or should they already be familiar with other COG content? Oh, and COG is shorthand Children of Gaia.
I think that actually the way we are releasing this content, it's very modular. There's really no book that I would say comes first. These are all kind of side stories that will coalesce into a greater picture. But in the meantime, I think jumping in anywhere is totally fine. Right?
Yeah. I mean, at some point, we're probably going to start releasing series, like, you know,
sure,
consistent plot series, and you know, that'll be more, you know, you want to experience that from, you know, in chronological order. But right now we're having fun with kind of putting out these kind of self-contained stories that hint at you know, much larger things going on.
Yeah. War Horses is actually going to be the first of a series based around the Trigger Man, this one character who's a mystery, causes chaos wherever he goes. All right. Okay, Shunned Owl asks, how inclusive is Children of Gaia? Things that are inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community can come off as against heterosexual cisgender folks. So how is this trap avoided in a place where everyone can be included in the story?
I think our philosophy is like we're not against anything. We're just going to show what we're for. You know, we're not. We have characters that have a wide range of orientations, genders. They're you know, we're to say that we're inclusive, but saying that inclusive is like excludes somebody is sort of a contradiction. So we're you know, we have characters that are extremely varied, and most people will identify with some, like, some of our characters.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much says anything I would have to say on that.
All right. Sorry, I have to turn my screensaver off. Okay, JC Chase asks, there seems to be a lot of parallels in Children of Gaia with colonialism on Earth. Are you trying to make any statements about the real-world impacts of colonialism?
I would say we've done a really good job of trying not to make this story a direct, applicable metaphor for any one event in history or any one culture or any one conflict. We definitely do reference a lot of common events, a lot of common themes of like colonialism and imperialism. You see that all over the world, all throughout history. And we try to make sure that we're not just putting pointy ears on a real specific event, you know. You know, like it's very mixed, and I think I mean we have done a lot of research and a lot of studying, and we're all, you know, students of history and students of culture, and I think we have a pretty good sense of well-rounded knowledge on these topics. You know, we've studied anthropology, we've studied cultural histories, and I think that it's kind of impossible to tell this kind of story without it having parallels to real things. but at the same time, like, it shows a human behavior, right? And in that human behavior, that's something that just happens over and over again. You can kind of make that happen anywhere. I don't know if I might have just danced away from that question or like talked myself in a circle, but.
There is a second part to the question. It says, what type of research have you done to cover the topic of colonialism, and do you feel that you've done so responsibly? Ooh, that's right to the point.
Heavy question.
You answered the question.
Okay, did I answer the second question with the first? Okay,
I
all
think
right.
so.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, that was my minor in school, and I have studied it ever since. I mean, that's like most of the books that I've read have been on that topic. I'm always talking about it with people that are experts on that topic, and we always have conversations about that. I mean, pretty much like we have what we call our COG core calls. So it's the core group of creators for Children of Gaia. And we'll have meetings where we just talk for like 2 or 3 hours about these things and go over the pros and cons of representing this way versus that way. I mean, we make it a point. We have hundreds of Google Docs where we're just writing down our thoughts, our ideas, our to-dos and to-not-dos. So, I mean, I think that that's as responsible as we can be.
Well, actually, the next question was, how difficult is it to be working with such a large group of people on several different projects at the same time? So that rolls in perfectly with what you were saying.
I'd say it's easier because the specific people we're working with are really talented, really patient, and really open to new things. I work with people at my day job all the time, and things can get hairy when you have so many people collaborating on the same thing. So it's sort of a...
How many people are in the COG core now?
6. Yeah, there's myself,
Maybe 8 if
Jayel.
we extend it, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's growing.
It's a growing group.
Yeah.
I think working in a group is great because everybody, you know, one artiste, you know, one you know, inspired person trying to make their own thing. You know, it's how most things go, and I think that's another answer to why COG is so unique, because
I'm going back to the first question.
yeah, we're not just paid writers working on a sitcom. We're invested in...
Not that there's anything wrong with sitcoms
sure.
or being a paid writer. I wouldn't mind being a paid writer.
But we're all invested in this project, and we're all here to bring ideas to it. You know, rather than a single creative force just putting whatever they've got in their head onto paper. Like we get a lot of ideas that one person might not have thought of. We get, you know, a lot of different perspectives, and I think that goes into the inclusive question as well, because it's like we have a variety of genders, of sexual orientations, of different just of different perspectives to contribute to it.
Yeah. Everyone comes in with their own biases, but then also with their own areas of focus.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we can help to
Kinda
even each other
check
out.
each other, keep everything like balanced.
Yuki Dog Zombie asks, are there a lot of cute characters in Children of Gaia?
The big questions.
Yes.
Very interesting
Yes,
cute characters.
I mean, sure. It's on Rendaria. There is a history of magic use, and here comes in like the high fantasy. And in such, you know, people have a tendency to meddle with things how and when they can. And if you have the magic and you can meddle with animals and or with yourself, with your own setup, like if you can alter your shape. I mean, of course, some people are going to make the cutest animal possible, or make themselves the cutest self possible, or, you know, so yes, there's going to also be a lot of cuteness. We also have characters who are just cute. They're just light-hearted, you know, bastions of silliness in this very dark world, and that's necessary. I mean, that's a service to society around you to be that kind of person, and not everyone can, but there's always people who are, even in the darkest times. There's always clowns, you know.
We have characters that start off cute. A lot of our characters start off as children, and they actually grow up across the timeline of the story. We get to follow a few of them as they grow. There's a lot of fun anthropomorphic creatures that are cute and also vicious at the same time.
Which is a thing.
Strong,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you can be fierce and protect yourself and your loved ones and still be adorable, right? I mean, just look at our cat.
Well, I don't know if he protects his loved ones.
I mean, they'll protect his treats, you know.
That's his loved ones, yeah.
He has cut me for a piece of pizza, you know.
All right, so we have a bunch of questions specifically about War and Horses, which is the Western style story that's coming up next. So I'm going to dive into those.
Okay, and for anyone that doesn't know, we are doing a Kickstarter that is launching this Monday, August 12th, and will conclude September 10th. And we will have either raised the budget to print that or not, because Kickstarter is all or nothing. And this will be our fourth Kickstarter, and so far we're 3 for 3 with success. So hopefully this one will do just as well, if not better, than the other ones, and we'll be releasing it this fall.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we are currently in Montana. Chris is in Vancouver.
BC.
And
But we're actually all from...
we're originally from New York.
Oh yeah. 3 of us
And
are from New
Lindsay's
York.
from
Lindsay's
Pennsylvania.
from Pennsylvania, so we've traveled quite a bit.
I mean, my brother, who's also part of the COG Corps, is not here because he's literally living out of a car, taking a tour group on an expedition across the states,
And,
stopping at several state parks and national
the writer
parks.
of War and Horses as well, Peter Lampisona, is also from New York.
Yeah, we're all East Coasters originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where from?
I grew up in Boston.
Oh,
okay.
nice.
My grandparents
Northeast, yeah.
both says lived on Bunker Hill in Charleston.
Okay.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Nice. Oh, did we?
Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. Did we answer the question, or did we just start talking?
We
about
were
it?
just-
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
we just started talking about War and Horses.
Okay, so the first question is, where does War and Horses fit in with regards to the overall story that is Children of Gaia? And I'm not sure if she means physically or timeline-wise. I'm interested in the timeline question personally. Because the larger story of Children of Gaia, like they said, they have like thousands of years of backstory more or less developed, but the actual story that we are interested in telling takes place over the course of what, 30-ish years?
Yeah, about 30 years. But yeah, it's sort of a generation, which is... and War and Horses kind of fits, I guess, just before our main story really starts. It's sort of like a... yeah, like it's not really backstory, but it's very, very near...
It's early.
Yeah, it's
Early
early
days.
on in the actual plot that we're working.
Does War and Horses take place at around the same time that Great Nations would be being written?
Probably, I think it takes place slightly after. I think.
Yeah, it would have to, because Trig's backstory.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is War and Horses about?
So, as I mentioned before, War and Horses is a story about a journalist kind of seeking this character that he calls the Trigger Man, who was seen coming into this town called Unsung. It's a rural town in this in this nation of the Empire that has just gone against all history and elected a democratically elected leader.
the first time.
The first time in the Empire's history. It causes a bit of a stir. And so this one nation is going through a lot of changes, modernizing from like older, feudal, aristocracy, and to actually giving the people the power to elect their leaders and govern themselves. And War Horses takes place in sort of a backwater town that hasn't quite adapted to this new world yet. And it's mainly described as a breadbasket town. It's a series of farms run by the governor, who is elected, but really was just the lord of this place before. He was elected, but really he's still part of the aristocracy. And,
There was no one else to root for.
yeah. And there's without giving too much away, there's a rustler that comes into town and causes a commotion. And this journalist, Landon Ford, is kind of investigating this story. And in doing that, he starts like trying to follow on the trail of this Triggerman character, this rustler. And he starts writing a series of these books that
He gets a little obsessed.
Mhm.
I have a question. The title War on Horses, why is that the title?
Well,
That might be a good question for Pete, who's not here.
Yeah, but
I think I can touch on that. So horses have to do with the part of the plot involves this rustler character stealing the prize horse of this governor, and that's the first bit of that's the first event that really causes all the trouble. And war, in that the world is sort of engaging in multiple wars all over. There's the war in Rendaria to colonize, the new world essentially, and then there's the civil war that this nation Draven had just gone through to overthrow their own aristocracy. So there's war and horses.
I think it's a great title. Okay, this also might be a question for Pete, but if you have thoughts on it, what was the inspiration behind War on Horses?
Well, so
It's hard to say.
it's a mix. I mean, some of like the aesthetics, a lot of that inspiration came from, you'd have like dime novels and like westerns, like Louis L'Amour books that were just, we love them. They're just so fun. The aesthetic is great. There's old westerns, and then as you try to look up like the history of those old westerns, you get like books where people put together kind of compilations of information with like old glass plate photography, like turn of the century, like photographs that are just so striking. There's such a great like aesthetic there, and I think we were just like, we have to figure out an event that we can make one of these kinds of books about with that like turn of the century style, like technology aesthetic. So we actually kind of try to, a lot of the illustrations in War on Horses are illustrated to look like that glass plate photography style, So I mean, yeah, I think that covers, right?
Yeah.
Inspirations were.
Yeah.
I would also,
A writer, a journalist, becoming a penny dreadful writer.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great pitch. I'm gonna use that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would also add to that the writer of War on Horses, Peter Lemson, who's not here unfortunately, really just loves gunslinger characters.
Mhm.
So he
Yeah.
really wanted to write
Yeah.
one, and he developed this excellent character who has a huge role to play in the larger story. So this is his first book
Yeah.
about that character. And actually, one of the short comics that we released that just
Oh,
was
features him
released.
as well, yeah.
Yeah, also features the Triggerman character. So, oh, this is an interesting one. How does War Horses fit in with Children of Gaia and Oneshi Press's love of progressive narratives? So the publishing company that Jayel and I run together is called Oneshi Press, and we are going to be publishing all the Children of Gaia properties, as well as other things. And Oneshi Press puts a lot of stock in progressive storytelling. So how does War Horses fit into that?
I would say that it's a challenge because War and Horses takes place in a very conservative, old school, patriarchal kind of backdrop. And the author himself, while he's, more modern than many of the other background characters, and he's from a seaport town, like a bustling city. He's from like the cutting edge of being the modern person. That's his background. And he's now in this really dusty old Western type environment. And a lot of the things that he sees are kind of just like, that's a lot of commentary, I think, on what isn't progressive. And I think by showing what isn't progressive, that's the other ingredient in showing what is progressive,
Yeah, I think that touches on a good point. It's a story. Children of Gaia in general are a collection of stories that are about a conflict, and the sort of invading forces, the empire takes place on, that resides in Terra. They are pretty much all male dominated. You said it's a patriarchy, and the land that they're invading and trying to take over, Rendaraian, is generally mostly matriarchal in structure, and so it can be loosely said that like Terrans are the bad guys. Not all Terrans are bad guys, but that's where most of the political evil is. And they're human characters that are just trying to get on with their lives, but they're in this sort of male-dominated culture, and it's what they're used to. And War Horses touches on, certainly brings up some of those male-dominated elements. You do see female characters that are trying to exist around all this stuff, like life is sort of happening to them. So it's not a very satisfying story for somebody interested.
It might be in the sense that like we have like Maggie's a great character. She's in a world that is completely adverse to her being the type of person that she is, and she doesn't give a damn.
Yeah.
She is who she is,
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, there's small personal rebellions happening in the background. Like we do put that in there, so.
Well, and as far as it goes, the Republic of Draven is trying to progress.
Yes.
Right, and this
It's
is
trying
the
to become
most
a democracy.
progressive of the imperial.
Yeah, amongst all the
nations,
empire
right?
of these 10 houses of the empire, Draven is definitely the most modern, the most progressive. They're the ones that actually have a republic-style government that elect their own leaders, where everywhere else is, monarchy, aristocracy, hereditary lordship. So, yeah.
And really, the book is about the fallout from that progress. How it's not really working everywhere, and that's why this book happens. All right, well, the next question is, will War and Horses contain any spoilers about other Children of Gaia narratives? And that's just because Deus always wants spoilers. have any?
I don't think it does.
Does it give away? If they are, there's Easter eggs, which
Yeah.
can be spoilers if you know that they're spoilers.
Right.
But a lot of times, the idea of hiding Easter eggs, peppering Easter eggs throughout a narrative is so that after you've gotten through all these books, then when you go back and look at it, you're like, oh man, that was right there. How did I had no idea, you know? So there's definitely a ton of Easter eggs in everything we do. But I don't think there's any real spoilers. There's introductions.
There's no spoilers to anything that's going to happen later on. It does hint at quite a few things that are part of the world building that we've done. The geographical location of this town puts it right near basically a volcano that's sort of constantly erupting. So you can see, like, even though it's across the sea, many miles, you can actually see the smoke of this volcano still kind of like filling the sky, and that harkens back to an ancient time in this world where humans had to escape this calamity, and it's sort of the basis of the dominant religion on Terra and within the Empire, and it kind of feeds into some of the some of the mentality of the people that live in this town unsung. They can sort of see this, like, this ancient doom that is sort of the basis of their religion. So they tend to resist change a bit more for that. And so it's not so much spoilers, but little seeds of, like, this is what this world is. This tells you. It's a small self-contained story, but it kind of hints that there's a lot more going on.
Yeah, a lot of hints and a lot of soft introductions to concepts that we'll be toying with as we go.
All right, the last question that we have on the list is from JC Chase. For someone who isn't a huge Western fan, what other aspects of War on Horses might someone like?
There's a lot of, like, general presentation of a history that I think history buffs might enjoy, even if the Western genre itself isn't particularly their bag. There's a rich aesthetic, just super detailed etchings and photo plate style illustrations throughout the entire book. We've tried to not go more than one page without a beautiful illustration in this 120, 130 page book, right? So, like, the book is just hundreds and hundreds of hours of art, right? Just, like, poured into this book. I don't even think I could actually properly calculate how many hours of art went into this book, so.
I should probably point out, I don't think we've directly said that Jayel and Chris are both primarily visual artists. They're
Right.
also clearly storytellers, but they co-illustrated War on Horses. Jayel illustrated and wrote Children of Gaia. Great Nations of Rendaria. And Children of Gaia, as their project, started out mainly visually. And has developed into a much more narrative kind of universe.
I can also say that War on Horses isn't exactly a straight-up Western theme. There's elements, but the town of Unsung is actually an old town that still has like the governor's mansion is more like a castle. The farmers that you interact with through the story, they kind of appear more like medieval serfs than just like Old West town folk, really. So
Actually, that's a good point.
It's an odd mix.
Yeah.
Because this town is so old, it was around back when back when the country was still under, under the thumb of the aristocracy. So it's still very, it still has all the, the aesthetics of that.
Are you hooked?
Yeah, I want to buy a copy of the book and give everybody to
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Great. Well, yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think we'll end the recording here and
Hey.
take care.